Daniel is a kind, loving, smart, patient, and thoughtful soul. I have a distinct memory of connecting with him for the first time while walking home from high school and finding out he lived but a few blocks away. Whether it's moving to Vancouver, going on exchange to Singapore, or just going cross-country skiing for a day, Daniel brings his love of nature and adventure. Daniel is motivated, driven, organized, and trustworthy. He now lives and works in Ottawa with the Canadian government, where he brings passion and compassion. I admire Daniel for his determination and overall positive attitude. Please welcome Daniel to today's podcast.
Thank you for that very nice introduction.
No problem. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'll kick things off. How did you push yourself to get a job with the Canadian government? And I know from talking to you a bit that it's kind of this long and tough process. So what kind of kept you going along the whole way? And were there ever times where you had kind of a doubt or thinking of like, how am I going to get through this whole process?
I've always had some interest in working for the public service for a long time. I think I'd actually gone through an application like early on, maybe my last year of university, without like giving it too much thought, or I'd maybe started one. Then because I was in Singapore on exchange, I don't think I would have been able to do like the online testing at that time. So I left it for the time being because they have some in-person tests at some point through their post-secondary recruitment campaign. And then obviously, like I found some other work in Montreal and was doing that. I still always had a bit of an interest in public service. So I monitored that and ended up applying, and then sort of got spurred into applying a little bit more seriously and looking into it a bit more, because our small consulting firm that I was working for was sort of shutting its doors on our side of the business. So it's somewhat out of necessity, but it was always like a big interest of mine anyway. And because I was looking at a long timeline anyway, it was easy to be patient throughout the process. But for sure, it is a long process. And a complex and very involved process as well. So it is probably something only people who are really interested in working in end up sticking through that whole process. But it was like a line of work I'd always been interested in and heard great things about. So I thought it was easy to sort of persevere. And you can learn a lot through applying for things. Like there's a lot of skills to be learned in terms of like practicing for an interview process and just like thinking through the experience you have as you apply to processes. So I guess I thought of it as like, even if I don't get through, it's always a numbers game and always a good learning experience as well, to try and apply and sort of remind yourself of the experience you do have and see different job descriptions out there. So it can be pretty interesting as well.
Were there ever moments where you had doubts in the process, or came up with some sort of barrier that you didn't really know how to overcome at that point?
I mean, I looked into it a lot before the process because I was pretty interested in it. And there's lots of resources, like lots of places online where you can read up a lot. So I was pretty mentally prepared for something that was going to take like an extreme amount of time and like a lot of effort, and probably, depending on the different ways you apply, a lot of either rejection or just like making it into a pool and then not hearing anything. Even though you've quote unquote qualified for the job, you still then have to be like selected for those positions by an interested manager. So I guess I was pretty prepared. So my mindset was just sort of to keep applying, and I'd gotten some interesting experience at that point. So I definitely felt like it was easier to answer those screening questions with some interesting work experience as a background. And I sort of just always had my mind on the next goalposts. So as I was doing these applications, I was also reading up on the interviews a bit and prepping a bit for interviews. So I guess that kept me motivated just to sort of see the next step. And it's a process with a lot of steps as well. There's usually, depends on the competition. So like post-secondary recruitment campaign, first you have a test. So I study a bit for that. At first you'll do it in a home environment where you're testing online, and then you'll be tested on computers but in person. And from there, like if your test scores are high enough and if your screening sheets, so even before all of this, you're applying and answering like a whole ton of different questions about different pieces of experience you might have. And from there you can be like invited to apply to different positions, but even that you sort of have to go through the process again. So potentially, or usually a test and then what they call a competition interview, which is like an interview with a board. And then after that, you can qualify in a pool. And if you're lucky, you'll then get contacted for a less formal interview. So it's very long and arduous process, but it keeps you engaged just because there are so many different steps on the way. So I guess there's always sort of a step and you're always waiting for something, and just tried to apply for like a lot of different departments and positions that interested me. So I definitely applied for a few, and then eventually with that post-secondary recruitment campaign got invited to apply to a few others as well.
Going a bit further back, I wanted to know about, maybe briefly first, just like what kind of work you do, but I think I have the impression that you bring kind of this compassion and passion to your work, like you're trying to help people in some sort of way. When did that come about, you realizing what you wanted to do, and how did you end up kind of in this work, and when did you know that this was a thing that you really wanted to be a part of?
That's a good question. I guess I've always had diverse interests. So one thing that attracted me to public service is there's so many different departments. Like it's such a huge organization, and all those departments are separate organizations, but they sort of can move from department to department fairly easily. And there's always new and interesting opportunities in public service. And then it's always been an interest of mine to sort of serve the public and work on things I've been passionate about. So that extends, I guess, further back than just my work in public service as well. Like my previous job was in environmental and social impact assessments for a consulting company. So I was on the social side doing impact assessments, which I think is pretty important work as well. And a lot of diversity in that job as well in terms of diverse tasks. And working for a small company was really interesting in terms of the different opportunities you can get. But I guess I was attracted to public service mostly because I really like the missions and mandates of a lot of different departments. And I like the idea of working for Canada and the Canadian public. Yeah, beyond that, I guess in terms of you're asking about my position now. So I work for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada. I'm a program advisor in the Settlement and Integration Policy branch. Obviously, we're concerned with the settlement of newcomers in Canada, and more specifically, I'm on a pretty small team. We run a federal internship for newcomers program, which is a program that eligible newcomers can apply to, and we try and seek opportunities to place candidates who make it into our pools and to like any kind of public service jobs. So that's like any federal or crown organization. And then we work with some provinces and some municipalities as well. So it's pretty exciting to be a part of that. And you get a lot of instant feedback just because we talk to the people in our pools, and we get a lot of exposure to the people who get opportunities through the program, because we do offer some training and mentorship through the program as well. So it's really nice to get sort of that immediate feedback and really like meet the people you're working and see like how much a difference it makes to them. I mean, getting sort of work experience that's commensurate with the skills that these newcomers are bringing to our society is really important, a really crucial part of integration. And it's pretty special to be a part of that. And when we hear about sort of the amazing experiences these candidates are bringing to the table, and then also what a huge difference maker it is for a lot of them to get employed through the program, it's pretty exciting for us. So we just have a lot of events where we come into contact with these candidates, and there's lots of people working in my branch and on my floor who've come through the program as well. So it's pretty neat to see sort of the amazing feedback we get. And of course, we're bringing diversity to public service and trying to make it a more representative and inclusive body as well. So that's a pretty sort of exciting thing to be working on, I think, for sure.
I want to get at, though, even prior to this work that you're doing now with the Canadian government, you've kind of had a thread along the way of, what is it you studied again? IR or something, kind of the international relations. So kind of when did that sort of work interest you, and when did you get drawn into that, like thinking further back?
Yeah, it's pretty hard to pinpoint. I've always liked a lot of different things. So I guess in my first year of SAGEP, I was in sciences, and I switched to humanities. So that was really a point where I was noticing that. We had some sort of like global or current affairs course in high school that I found super interesting. And then after, I guess, a year at UBC, I was kind of looking, eyeing like international relations or political science as possible programs. And the more courses I took in that vein, the more interested I became in it. And some of what I like about it too is just the multidisciplinary approach. I find it really interesting to kind of stay a bit broad in general and not be too focused and bring different ideas and different approaches and try and come up with holistic ways of looking at problems and hopefully finding interesting solutions. I guess there's no one time I can point to really. It was probably just like a gradual understanding of what things I liked a little bit more than others. And obviously that changes with time as well. And in terms of like coursework, I find professors always make a big difference too. So they can really bring a lot of passion out in their students. So I'm sure I've had some great professors along that way that probably helped me realize how much I like those fields. And then like I got an opportunity to do some volunteering at BC's Council for International Cooperation, which was pretty cool. And looking into like sustainable development goals and how Canada specifically could reach those targets. So that was some interesting work as well that I guess got me introduced to that field of work. And I guess not quite what I was doing afterwards, because that would have been an NGO. And then I mostly worked in private afterwards and now in the public sphere. But just an interesting first look at how to work and how to work in a team in an interesting way and do some cool research and some interesting projects.
I mean, when I think of you as someone who's able to really kind of strike a nice balance of like work and life, and you're even, in this long-term relationship as well. You've managed to just move and stuff. So, what are some things you do maybe on a daily basis or just more generally to like keep all of these kind of things balanced in your life?
That's a tough question to ask these days, where I could think
Yeah.
COVID is blurring the lines for a lot of people between work and their personal lives. One big thing in like my current position that's really nice is because everything we do is on the network. When I close my computer, that's kind of it for the day. Like I'm not getting emails through my phone or anything. So that creates a lot of separation between work and personal life. And public service is known for having really good work-life balance. There's a lot of super hard workers in public service and lots of different departments as well. So there are for sure times and areas where people are working really hard and really long hours. But fortunately for our team, I mean, we definitely work very hard, but for the most part, we're able to have like pretty balanced hours. There'll be occasional times where we put in like a pretty big push, but we've got like a pretty continuous cycle where we've always got a lot on the go. So we're pretty cognizant that we need to manage both our personal and professional lives. I think also, like just if you read some literature on the subject, it's important to remember that you're going to be a more effective employee and a better worker if you do have a bit of separation between your personal life and your work life. And if you are able to take the time to relax and take the time for yourself, it really makes you come back like stronger, more rested, ready for new challenges. So I think remembering to put yourself first, and sort of like those planes, or what they say in the planes, like you always got to reach for your own oxygen first. I think that's like an important metaphor in terms of like balancing a work and personal life as well. Like you definitely have to consider your personal life for sure, because if you're not able to find that balance, it's going to be affecting your work regardless. So there's no point burning the midnight oil at all times just to find your personal life in shatters, and then the same is probably going to come at work too. And I think that's something that's hopefully improving. I think mental health is being taken more and more seriously, and I think people realize like what a difference that makes in the workplace. So hopefully we're moving towards a society that cares a lot about striking that balance. And then personally, I don't know, I guess it's like just having that routine of like I like to commute to work by bike or some kind of human transport. So walking I've done as well. I feel like getting a little bit of exercise and a little bit of time outdoors before getting into the office and after leaving the office is sort of like a nice way to start and end the day. You have to recognize that there is always like a little bit of blending of personal and professional life. I mean, lots of people count a lot of their colleagues as dear friends, and it's important to have like not just a professional relationship, but a social relationship with colleagues as well. And I guess that blends it a bit, and hopefully you find something you do that you're really passionate about, where it doesn't feel like a huge sacrifice to be spending a little bit of extra time in the office because you're doing something maybe exciting and something you really care about. So that's a nice thing as well. But even in that case, I think it's important to be mindful that you do need some time to rest and recharge, and it is important to strike that balance, not just for your own well-being, but also, like, I always think that I'm a much more effective worker when I'm well rested too. I notice that after like periods of working for longer, like I can be effective for like a certain amount of time, certain number of days of working like really hard and long hours, but then the productivity does drop at a certain point as well. Yeah, well, working from home is definitely an interesting experience. It's taken some getting used to, and I think we're still trying to adapt in a lot of ways. We're still adapting a lot of our processes at work. We work really well as a team from home, work really well as a team in the office too, but I guess because we're used to working closely together, we've been able to continue managing that, which has been really nice. But it did take some getting used to having the same environment as your home environment and office environment at all times. I think a lot of people took some adapting in terms of they felt a need to sort of continue working at all times as a result of that. And I think early on, there was a lot of stress going around about sort of uncertainty in the future with COVID. And that obviously stressors, whether it's in the workplace or at home, are obviously going to affect people's ability to focus. And I've been pretty lucky. I mean, lots of people have young kids who are attracting a lot of their attention, and public service has been great about helping out those groups, but it hasn't been an issue for me and not for my original team either. So we were able to work pretty effectively in that kind of environment. And I've just sort of, I guess, pretty much settled into my routine here too, of getting up and starting work at a certain time and then trying to be relatively diligent of signing off. And then once I sign off, I'm kind of off, and I don't check anything from there until the next day.
Yeah, and in terms of like getting in that routine and being an effective worker too at work, like are there any sort of practical things you do, like in terms of like writing stuff down or being very organized? When is it when you can say like, okay, I'm going to sign off now? Like, have you reached all these things you set out to do in that day, or like sometimes those don't get met? Or
That's a good question. I mean, we're always setting goals for our team and for ourselves, or deadlines rather. So I guess mentally, not super diligent about making lists of things I need to do. It sort of depends on the number of things that need to be accomplished. But I'll definitely make, if nothing else, like a mental task list of things to do during the day. I guess having those done is a big help, or knowing at least where they lay is pretty good for ending the workday. We do generally have some flexibility on some internal deadlines. We like to set things early so that we do have a bit of that flexibility, and we work pretty well as a team too, so we're always able to support each other to try and help meet the deadlines that we do set. So that's definitely a comfort, knowing I've got some very capable team members that are ready to take over as I sign off, and vice versa, that I'm there to help them out when they've got something pressing going on. And then it's always like little things come up during the day. So it's interesting trying to sort of reprioritize. And I guess I'm also an advocate often of like those little tasks that are super quick to do, and or like an email that's really quick to reply to is usually best to do it as soon as it comes up, just because sort of the mental effort of like coming back to it or tracking it, even like in your mind and trying to remember it, is a lot higher than like the few seconds or few minutes it'll take to sort of accomplish it right away. And it's definitely a bit of a sense of accomplishment between succeeding in like small tasks as well as large ones throughout the day. So yeah, it's hard to say. It really depends on different projects and different tasks we're doing. It involves different levels of organization, but I guess there's always like a little bit of mental tracking, and there's so many tools we have now too, like Outlook. You can set flags for emails you have to review, so I'll look over those every once in a while to make sure there's nothing I haven't addressed, and do a lot of notes by hand too on things I need to go over, just because I find putting pen to paper definitely helps me remember some of those things. So there's some level of organization for sure. And I think some of that just comes in how I think of things in my mind. But I don't know if there's any like hyper organization or like huge routine to that organization, just like regular check-ins with the team, and we're able to help each other and sort of remind each other of different tasks to do and keep track of those things together. So a lot of collaboration with others, and a lot of prioritizing for myself and thinking of sort of different things that I'd like to do and different things that I need to do. And obviously prioritizing the things that need to get done first to determine what to do and when to do it.
So I wanted to switch gears, but it's something you even had mentioned in kind of your routine of when you were going into the office and back, having that kind of outdoor and exercise aspect to it. So I know you also kind of an avid cross-country skier and doing regular kind of outdoors activities, and it seems like your family and also your family friends kind of share this interest. So I wanted to know, how did that develop? Has this kind of always been a part of your life? And how do you keep finding the time to kind of keep up with these things? And maybe more broadly, kind of what role does like exercise and being in nature kind of have in your life?
Not totally sure how it came about. I've been doing it since a super young age, and I've always loved it. It's like skiing. I think I started when I was 5. I always loved to ski. I always loved all sorts of different sports. So soccer too, I started at quite a young age, and then eventually started playing a bit more competitively. Got involved in all sorts of different sports in high school as well, like some track and field, soccer as well, rugby for about a year or two. And then was like rowing competitively for a bit of, for CEGEP and first year of university. So I guess like sport has always been a part of something I do, and I've always been really interested in it. And I think, I don't know, I definitely feel a little restless if I haven't gotten too much exercise in a week or something. So I definitely feel like it helps mentally too, helps me focus, helps me relax as well, and helps establish a routine too, getting exercise. That's always been a part of my life and always been an interest of mine since a very young age. And outdoors, I think, is pretty similar. I guess cross-country skiing is like a pretty outdoorsy sport anyway, because you're out in trails in the woods. And I've always really enjoyed skiing. And then I did scouts or the Cubs or whatever comes before scouts at a fairly young age as well. My dad was involved volunteering with the Cubs group. So it was a bit of a family thing as well. And we'd all go up to the cottage together and play in the water and run around in the woods and stuff and canoe everywhere. So that was always like a really special place in the summertime. I'd like to continue that in BC. I did all sorts of hikes outdoors, and I've been trying to keep up some hikes since then, although we don't have quite the same spectacular mountain ranges here, but there's still lots of nice things to see. And I think, to me, I mean, I know people have different opinions on that, but to me, for sure, like being outdoors and feeling like part of nature is like a really important way to sort of recharge and just like one of the more enjoyable things for me to do. So something I've pretty much always loved, and probably taken not the same, like an increased passion with time. I'm always excited to explore new outdoor places or return to old favorites and just relax and enjoy my time there. And I don't know, something about getting some exercise in the great outdoors and seeing all the beauty of nature around us is like a really invigorating and sort of calming experience at the same time.
And it seems like too, for you, sometimes it might be kind of like a social experience too. I know a lot of like your friends, or at least like your family friends, you share these kind of interests. So it brings kind of like a social aspect. Would that be fair to say too?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's definitely like a fun hobby to share with other people. There's no need to do it on your own, but what's great is like it can be done sort of on your own or together with people. So it's a really fun one to share, and it's one you can sort of enjoy at any time too, even if nobody's available to join you. There's lots of nice like outdoor things to do. So yeah, definitely a nice way to connect with people, and a way of, I guess, I've always connected with people and met people, and definitely a fun passion to share with others. Yeah, and I think important to connect with the environment that we're so reliant on the earth and the environment. It's kind of nice to appreciate just like the beauty and the joy of being outside and in interesting places.
I was listening to an interview today with Jane Goodall, and it was talking similarly about the environment. And yeah, we kind of take a lot of these things for granted, which has gotten us in this mess. And in a lot of cases, we've been so detached from the natural world. And that's why I'm interested by someone like you who makes an effort consciously to like reach out to get in touch with nature pretty regularly. And I think it's missing in a lot of people's lives. And that's partly to blame for a lot of these problems in terms of how we're treating the environment.
Yeah, probably if everybody was getting out there and started loving the environment, we'd have a lot of conservationists in the world, which we definitely need. But there's like a huge overhaul that we need in terms of our mindsets and protecting the environment and the resources we do have. So hopefully when you see the protests this past year, it's really inspiring to see how much people want change. So hopefully that's something that's coming and governments will start to take more and more of a lead on.
So I know you've mentioned it a bit briefly too, but places like Vancouver, Singapore, you've reimagined and moved in your life kind of multiple times. How does that process work for you? How do you mentally prepare yourself for a move, or how do they come about? And in terms of when you actually get to like these new places, how do you make yourself feel at home in a new city, whether it's Vancouver, Singapore, Ottawa?
I guess I've always seen them as like exciting opportunities. I mean, it's always a choice. I'm the one making the choice to make that move. So I should have to take advantage of it for sure. There's a lot to enjoy about different places, and it's easy to find, or easy for me to find kind of like the best thing about being in a new place and new environment, and to enjoy the new things that place has to offer. So I guess it's been sort of like an exciting opportunities. Some have been shorter than others. Like Singapore was only an exchange semester university, so it's pretty easy to say that it's your home for a short while. Vancouver is just like such a fantastic city, has beautiful nature and just a super livable city as well. So it was super fun to be there. And then Ottawa is similar too. Like it's got lots of great parks and super close to Gatineau Park and all sorts of waterways, and feels very connected to the outdoors and easy to get involved in outdoor activity here. It's a bit about finding like your passion in the city and things you like in the city, and then maybe meeting people through those. And it's always exciting to be able to meet new people in a new environment as well. So I guess like it's always come out of like a sense of excitement to go to a new place and learn new things and see new things and meet new people, which I guess can be challenging as well. But I think like with the right mindset, it's pretty easy to overcome those challenges and just like enjoy all the benefits of a new place and getting to know a place that you're not so familiar with more and more.
You mentioned something along there of meeting these new people, and it seems like you do have a lot of friends, and a lot of friends kind of all over the world too. And I've had a chance to meet some of them. It seems like they're always very, happy to see you. And I wanted to know kind of what role do these friendships have in your life, and maybe how did you even go about, making these friends, and then how do you keep them maintained despite being kind of spread throughout the world, or, not seeing them as often?
Some of it is depending on the friends. I'm not always that great at maintaining it at all, but I feel like with so many friends, and I think so many people feel the same way, like you can be apart with a friend for years and then you see them again sometime and it's like you had just seen each other yesterday. Like it's pretty easy to sort of slip back into getting along and having a fun time. And I don't know, even if there's a gap, you still know them so well, and it's always kind of fun to reconnect with old friends too. So I guess that's a big part of it. Definitely fun to meet people through like activity that you're passionate about and in different ways. And of course, organically, so many friends I made through introductions by other friends. So that's a pretty good reference when somebody you care about deeply introduces you to somebody that they really care for too. It's pretty easy to see how you might be able to connect. Having good friends, new friends and old friends is great and important part of being happy and having happy and healthy relationships for sure. I don't know if I've thought enough about sort of like how friendships are made and how I specifically make them. I don't think I have any particular talent for it, but I think I've been very lucky in terms of the people who I am surrounded by and the people I call friends. Yeah, lots of luck, I guess, and great people.
Building off that, you seem to be good at networking or having leading you in different ways of mentorship, or people that can just help you in knowing where to kind of turn to get for help, whether professionally or not or whatever? And well, firstly, is that even true? I don't know. And secondly, well, if it is true, like how do these people kind of play a role in your work or in your life? And would you recommend people find some sort of kind of mentorship or people that they can look to follow in their footsteps in a way?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever really had like a true mentorship relationship, but I've never been shy about talking to different colleagues and learning about what drives them and getting sort of their suggestions on career prospects and small things like ways to improve work as well. So I guess, being interested and engaged and just asking people questions is a pretty important thing. That's another thing where, like, when I think of it, I love answering questions like that. Like, I'm always happy. And if people come to me with questions, and obviously, like, all you can do is give suggestions and guide people and maybe tell people a little bit about how you felt an experience was and suggest what you did, or give some tips here and there. I guess doing it for other people might help you realize some of those things for yourself as well. And I think just being inquisitive by nature and having great supportive colleagues and supportive managers too is always really helpful in terms of professional career development. And networking it's easy to find a connection with somebody because people in the field you're interested in are probably pretty passionate about that field as well. So if you have a passion about it, I think people are really, really open and willing to having a conversation about what they do and how maybe you can get started in the same career. So I've never had any kind of formal mentorship, but I've definitely haven't been shy about asking colleagues and friends about sort of what they do and how they went about doing it. And I'm always happy to provide those answers as well and help guide or give maybe some little tips for people through their professional journey if I'm able to.
People sometimes can be shy, or I know for me, sometimes I feel kind of awkward of like, sending a message to someone that you've maybe not even met before, but if you can at least get on their level in terms of like relating to their work and having a shared interest in that, I guess that's what you're saying, right? Like,
exactly. And cold calling and like reaching out to people out of nowhere is always a tricky thing too. It's a bit of like a mental barrier to overcome. And of course it involves rejection. Like people are busy, but I think usually it's just people might not have the time, and I'm sure for certain individuals probably get messages out of the blue all the time and might not have the time to offer the same supports. But I think so many people, if you form the right connection, are just interested enough in sharing what they do and hearing from somebody who's passionate about it and young and sort of willing to break into that industry or that line of work, that it's easy to share what they do with those people. It's always worth reaching out. The worst thing that can happen is the person might not have the time and might not be able to help you out, but there's no harm in doing it. And I think people can be sort of shy because they sort of wonder what's in it for the person they're reaching out to. But there's lots of benefits in terms of, like, in a mentor and mentee relationship, the mentor benefits a lot. And that's something we know, like, through our program as well. There's a mentorship aspect of the program, and the volunteers who mentor through that program are really passionate about it and are really glad that they've mentored through the program because they feel like they've learned a lot. And it's definitely something a lot of people enjoy, and people are happy to take the time to talk a little bit about what they do. So something that's maybe tricky to convince yourself to do, but it can work wonders. And sometimes all you might get out of it is a small conversation or a few little messages. It's interesting to build those human connections where we work and learn a little bit about different pieces of work and different people who work in the industry. So networking is always like an interesting opportunity for sure, and great way to learn and meet people who enjoy what they do, or hopefully enjoy what they do.
And in terms of how you approach your life professionally versus personally, like, I know you talked a bit on it before, but like, do you kind of like access another side of you in a way when you're dealing professionally, or is it still the same kind of coming at the same place of maybe just curiosity or, interest or whatever it is? Like, is there a clear line for you kind of between your professional side and your personal side?
I might deal with different types of things at work and at home. So it might result in sort of like pretty different interactions and different pieces of work. But I definitely definitely feel like the same person, and I'm not separating myself between my personal and work life. I'm just dividing my time between the two. I like really open work environments where people can feel like they can be themselves and be effective employees and good colleagues. I don't feel like I'm dividing my time between personal and professional life, and always there can always be like a little bit of blurring. And that can be both a positive thing and a negative thing if people aren't able to sort of have at least some separation between the two. But yeah, I definitely feel like the same person both at work and at home.
Yeah, in terms of kind of the interplay between them two, how has that worked? Like, have you learned some things that you carry from kind of your professional side that you've learned and adapted them to kind of your regular personal life, or vice versa? Like, are there things in your personal life that you try to harness to when you bring to work?
Yeah, I'm sure I have. I can't think of like any examples offhand, but maybe that just speaks to sort of the fluidity between the two, I guess. Hopefully learning some new things every day, either like at home or work, and definitely easy to transfer skills. Soft skills are so important in an office environment, and learning to work well with others and cooperate with teammates and work on projects with people, and even just like making social and human connections with other people can really help you improve a working relationship with them, and maybe learn some more and get more out of the experience on the whole. So I guess I'm sure I'm bringing things from my personal life into the workplace, and vice versa. I mean, there's lots of opportunities through work that you might not have so much in your personal life in terms of presenting and doing all sorts of things. And those are valuable skills that can transfer over really well to your personal life as well. So I don't doubt at all that those are skills that transfer really well, and you can learn from work and bring home, and vice versa.
So in terms of your drive and your work, I feel like and you mentioned it kind of before, just getting the job in the first place with the federal and the public sector side, how it was kind of this thing you had in your mind and was kind of always on the horizon. So in terms of continuing to work your way forward in life, and maybe more broadly, just how do you approach future, or how do you think about the future in kind of a positive way?
So sort of like how to balance ambition with contentment and like feeling.
Yeah, in terms of like looking towards the future, and because there's some degree of planning ahead, or seeing kind of where you want to be, but the path is not always very clear or pretty, or might get knocked off path and something else will happen. So how do you set yourself up to meet the future, but without setting yourself up for failure and disappointment if you don't meet the particular thing you've set out to do?
For one, like I don't think we have to shy away from disappointment and failure. There's lots to be learned from failures. You can learn a lot from failure, and you can learn a lot from disappointment as well. They're maybe not emotions you want to cling to for very long, but there's a lot you can learn, and helps remind you maybe what drives you in the first place. But I think like my mindset is that I really enjoy the work I do now. I'm always eager for new challenges, and I get that a lot through current positions, but of course, like I'm sure I'll be looking to other positions in the future. So I guess look at like sort of ambition as a way to seek out new opportunities. So it's not because there's anything wrong with the current opportunity, but just a way to find new challenges for the future. And then if you don't get those opportunities, there's always other opportunities down the line. I guess some of it is just sort of being eager for the next thing, maybe, but taking the time to smell the roses and enjoying where you're at presently too, instead of always just chasing the next thing. Maybe striking a bit of a balance between those things. There's always a lot to be learned, sort of no matter what level you're at in your career. I don't know, I'm always excited by new challenges and new opportunities. So I think I naturally seek those out a little bit, and seeking out a new opportunity is sort of part of the challenge, and part of the obstacles to overcome. So it's like a bit of fun in its own right, and for sure it can be disappointing if you don't get something you were hoping to get. But I think it's just gives you another opportunity to seek something else out. So I definitely have a mindset of like a door closing means another door opening. I think there's always opportunities to be had, and it can be frustrating, I guess, especially for people looking to start a career and maybe looking for that first opportunity, which is usually the hardest to find. And then things get easier usually, and more interesting from there. So can be hard to persevere. You just have to, I guess, remind yourself of the passion and keep your eye out for new challenges and opportunities, and be aware that sort of when they come, enjoy the best parts of it, and always continue to try and challenge yourself, whether that be working through the position you're in, or if you feel like I guess if I feel like I'm getting too comfortable, then that's when I would start keeping my eye out and maybe looking for new opportunities as well, so that I'm always sort of learning and improving myself and my skills, and hopefully my career trajectory through that as well.
Joining kind of the public service was something you kind of saw years in advance. So what kind of advice would you give to someone who has that same sort of thing of seeing, okay, I have ambition or this goal that's maybe kind of long term, but how do I get to that? How do you work towards that without being too focused on it?
The thing with those big long-term goals is they often change. Like some people have I don't have any really defined like super long-term goals. Some people have really defined long-term goals and then achieve them and that's all they want. And some achieve them and might be looking for something more, and some might never achieve them and might decide that's something that's not for them, either because they're not keen on the sacrifices, maybe to their personal life for professional success, or maybe they just realize they have some other interests along the way. In terms of advice, public service is so broad. There's so many different fascinating departments. So got to be like something that's of interest to anyone. So all of them are of interest to me to some extent, just because I do have a passion for working for the public and working for Canadians. But Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada was always a department that was right at the top of my radar, with a mission that I think is really important and something I'm passionate about for sure. Maybe similar to the ambition question, in terms of you can have those long-term goals and it's really good to have something to strive towards, but don't make everything about the goal. Make sure you focus a bit on the journey. You're starting off a career, not just a job. So there's lots of interesting jobs that come along the way, and it's not just that last final job that you have to enjoy. Really take the time to learn throughout the process and learn new things in different positions and make the most out of where you are at any given time. And through those experiences, you might learn a bit more about yourself and your interests, and maybe those long-term goals will change, or maybe they'll stay the same. But either way, you'll be working towards what you really want to do, and hopefully along the way, you'll be finding other things that you're really interested in as well.
And there's probably some degree of patience for trusting the process in a way that you will end up somewhere, and you do have this kind of orientation, but who knows, stuff changes along the way. And like you said, you learn all these different things that maybe you didn't know you would, or can take you other places. But at least even having that kind of long-term horizon out there maybe helps you orient yourself.
I would just say it's important to keep it flexible too. I think some people might have like a dream job in mind, and then it's sort of always there. So it's just a dream because they had that dream at a really young age, and they haven't thought so much about it since then. So make sure you're learning about yourself and your interests throughout your career, because you want to be flexible to change maybe those long-term goals if you feel like you've learned something new about yourself and your interests professionally. But yeah, I definitely agree with that. I'd say even more than trusting the process, maybe trust yourself, like trust in your abilities to improve your skills and to learn what you want to learn, and go out there and seek out the opportunities that you want and you feel you're capable of filling.
Well, I want to thank you, Daniel, for coming on and reiterate kind of what I said in the opening remarks of kind of bringing your positivity to everything. And I kind of had a thread of that through each of your questions, which I think is really nice. And some people find it harder to see than others, but I think you bring a lot of light to that, and it's really refreshing and nice to hear. So thanks again for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. It was cool. Definitely lots of great questions and prompts, and fun to have a chat with a great friend about some interesting things we're both interested in. So thank you for having me and for putting the podcast together.
And I just wanted to, if there's any final words in terms of like resources people should look at, or any things you've done in the past that you want to promote or anything like that.
People who are generally interested in public service, especially if they're students, the student recruitment campaign is like a really great way to come in, as is So that's if they're graduates, really. If they are students, getting work through like federal student workers program is a great way into the public service. Looking at different departments, pretty much all of federal public service jobs are posted on the same website, GC Jobs. So it's worth looking into sort of how to apply there and learning some tips on how to apply. Public Service Commission, PSC, has a website as well that has some special recruitment campaigns for graduates. Different departments have different types of special recruitment campaigns, so those are definitely worth checking out, especially for relatively recent graduates who are interested in joining.